Child abuse child actors, all grown up, never talk about it. I'm not sure if they remember. I feel like part of them must, and that's why people catch their latent anxiety and think they're messed up on drugs. It's very rare for a child actor to bridge the gap to adult acting. And I think those that do must have been very lucky. They never had a role requiring the Daughters of Eris. That's not what they call themselves. The Daughters of Eris, according to my quick internet search, come from Greek mythology. They were like minor gods responsible for sorrow and weeping, I think. I looked it up back in 2010 because I just started as a production assistant for a minor film company out of Toronto. Essentially, my boss, a chain-smoking asshole I barely saw, got contracts to send equipment and assistants like me to bigger studios from America. There's a rule about the percentage of Canadian workers on a set. If a company met that percentage, they were entitled to tax benefits and sometimes funding too. It doesn't matter beyond the reason why a 20-something kid out of film school should suddenly be walking around a set doing fetch quests for just about everyone else. Literally, I was the bottom rung of a very long ladder and took a lot of abuse for only decent money. Lots of free food though. Right, so I looked up the Daughters of Eris because some dude said I needed to clear and reserve a room for them in this old, huge house we were filming a scary movie in. Sorry, I can't tell you which one. I'm scared to share this story already. I don't know what's going to happen once they find this post on Reddit. Hopefully, they never do. I'm only writing this because I feel like people should know, don't put your kids in the movies, especially if it's a drama or something requiring tears. Film people are often fucked up. It seems to be a requirement for advancement in the industry. Like the higher you go, the more self-important and crazy you must be. Here are some examples. I watched a rather famous director, after the incident I'm writing about today, literally walk onto set with a shoebox full of cocaine. Don't worry, it was to share. He was upset when I didn't want any, and made me leave the production. This is considered totally reasonable within the industry. Another very famous director once punched out another production assistant when a camera stopped working and a difficult shot failed. The production assistant went to the hospital with black eyes and a concussion. The director went back to work and finished the film. You almost certainly know the film and probably saw it. That director is a billionaire now, and his movies suck. The point is these people do not care about humans. Actors, assistants, and everyone occupy the same level of importance as props and tools. All have been supplied to make a vision of extreme importance in the mind of a few disturbed people. I used to really love movies. Now I just can't. Not that I know what is done for the most convincing performances. The Daughters of Eris only send one agent to a set. Nobody gets to see them. Nobody but the actor they've been contracted to work with. Not even the godlike directors stay. It's about the only time the lofty film folk are sobered up through an almost tangible apprehension. See, employing the Daughters of Eris is a risky move. It can make or destroy a film, a career, a life. Only the most intense assholes on the planet, those so deep in the industry and into their own rear ends, have heard of them and then still gone on to sign their nefarious contracts. Again, the Daughters of Eris is not what they call themselves. It's a name industry insiders, the deeply cloistered ones, gave them in the 60s. They actually have no names other than what humanity has whispered in the dark for centuries. You might not know what primal fear is, but I can explain. It's the dread you feel when there's a sound you can't identify and everything else, every other sense, is prevented by pitch black night. It's both the unknown and the inability to act to resolve the situation. No light within reach. No pets in the house to reasonably blame. Nothing can be done except passively waiting for what's to come and hoping nothing does. Room 1. Ready? That's the way they talk to a production assistant. Never mind, the one asking was also a production assistant. Dave had been there for years and been fully converted to the lifestyle. Ready? No, I confessed, I just emptied it. I was about to see what the instructions were for furnishings and Dave spoke fast into his headset. It's ready. Bring the kid. Clear the set. The kid in question will call Bella both to protect her identity and to hopefully pass along the beauty and the innocence of her. She looked scared. Her mom pulled Bella by her forearm roughly. Hey Dave got in my face and started pushing my shoulders. Set needs to be clear. Out. When I saw Bella's mom leave the basement with some other crew members fast and Dave passed me by the front door of the house, I stopped. What about Bella? What's going on? Dave tried to grab my wrist through the threshold, reluctant to come back inside. I pulled away. What about the kid? Who's down there with her? The look in Dave's eyes as he shook his head and took off said it all. The kid was alone. The hell with that. I didn't give a shit what anybody said. I pushed through the fleeing remnants on my way to the basement. Happily, I would be sent home and off the production and they could shove their stupid horror movie up their ass. I don't know what I expected to see when I got down there. Certainly, the room had been made to look like a colonial stone-aged leftover, the kind a cult would approve of, with its crude altar, cobwebs, and corners darkened amidst a carefully prepared clutter of everyday things. Yet, the lone girl, dressed in the cliché white nightdress, seated on the bare floor, still made me uneasy. Nothing besides recording cameras and bright lights filled the space. Everyone else had fucked off like a fire drill. Bella, I started to say, but the bad feelings grew as I went down the stairs. I felt so bad, I could no longer stand. Fuck, I couldn't even sit right. I tried but ended up stretched out on the floor, covering my head with my hands. I couldn't speak. The air pressed down, cold and penetrating. Wooden steps creaked with a heavy weight as the daughter descended. She brought the stench of disease, a vile odor like too much sweat, cloying, stinging, filling my mouth and turning my stomach. Bella whimpered. From the ground, I could only see her bare feet and neatly folded hands. My vision blurred. Thick legs jammed into undersized shoes. Black tights under strips of cloth that danced in an airless scene. Bella's whimpering turned to sobs. No, she said softly. Get away from her, I choked out at an even lower volume. I didn't know what was happening, but, as scared as I was, I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try to help. My first attempt to move didn't prove too fruitful. I sort of spasmed and my arm shot out above my head, painfully scraping across the floor. Bella's scream sounded painful. Adrenaline shot through my veins. I did a slow, shaky push-up and staggered to my feet. The stench continued to make my head swim. I wiped my eyes and could see a little better. Get the fuck away from her, I finally managed at an audible level. The figure ahead had a very wide set of shoulders. What I thought were tendrils were actually tattered coattails. Tights weren't tights, but just tight dress pants. It was a man, a very strange and disturbing man. He exhaled and turned around slowly, revealing a severely disfigured face, no nose there. Just a single ragged hole for a nostril that didn't work. His wide mouth hung open and that's how he breathed. Both eyes were milky white, blind, I think. The left side of his face looked like melted wax, scarred in waves of skin. All of his teeth were missing when he smiled. I couldn't get a straight look at him. His edges were blurry. My eyes kept trying to bring him into focus and the effort made me woozy. Bella cupped her hands to her face and wept. Get away, I said again, quietly. His smile grew and he reached for me with fingers like cigarette lighters, the kind they used to put in old cars and every kid burned themselves on. I could hardly stand. Fighting, running were out of the question. That left one option. I threw my body into the mounted camera and managed to crash the lens away from the scene. I don't know what I thought would result from this action exactly. Some vague idea about ending the shot and thus the frightening ordeal, I guess. Fortunately, it worked. At least, it worked for me. When I recovered enough to separate from the camera, the blurred man was gone. I don't know if he simply left or disappeared. And I didn't care. He was gone and that was enough. Bella continued to cry, softer now. I went to her, and gently pulled her hands away to see what had been done. Ashes had been traced in 2 lines in the center of her forehead. No visible wound had been inflicted, but she winced when I wiped the marks away with my sleeve. I held her until the crew and her shitty mom returned. The assistant director started yelling at me almost immediately and threatened my job. I didn't care. I left the basement without a word, intending to go and never come back. Instead, I went to the room I had prepared for the Daughters of Eris. I smelled the burnt candles before I saw them. A pentagram had been burned into the floor, and there were some red dots that were probably blood. Some high school looking shit, if I'm being honest. I left and called my boss. I wasn't fired, though. I was taking off this stupid film, and I didn't quit. I had mixed feelings for sure, and I was pretty fucked up from the ordeal. Had some nightmares about the man that were bad enough to wake me up. Just like in the movies. But I also had bills to pay. After a few days off, my boss had me do some other production with no children. Seemed like a prudent choice on his part. The dumb spooky film didn't make it to release. It happens sometimes, but I still felt bad for Bella. She'd been scarred for nothing. I quit the business a year and a half later and life moved on. I hadn't thought much about her again until the moment I saw my old boss number on my phone. He had bad news. Last week, Bella, all of 22, was found in her motel room apartment. She'd overdosed on a cocktail of drugs. Her life, after that stupid unfinished movie, went awfully. My boss never told me until this call that the reason the production collapsed was Bella. She'd become distracted, inconsolable often, and, at least in one incident, violent. Her mother said the attack was unprovoked. While sitting on set, eating lunch, Bella threw a punch straight into the nose of her terrible mother, breaking it. Good. At least she got some consequences. Not so good. Bella was sent to live with her even worse father. From there, my boss lost what little connection to her he had until he saw her on Tour Hill and Bridal Veil Lake. He was on his way to the casino. She was on her way to work apparently. He recognized her despite the many years that had gone by. She, of course, had no idea who he was, but after he explained, she agreed to let him buy her a drink. Things got weird from there. My old boss got really vague about the details during the phone call. In any case, he knew where she'd been living and became familiar with the owner. That's who called him when Bella died. The funeral was yesterday. I went. So did the man without a nose. It rained hard yesterday, and everyone had an umbrella. Everyone but him. He stood away, by some trees, and stared, not at the funeral but at me. I tried to call him out but couldn't hear my own voice in the downpour. The closer I got, the wider his empty smile grew. He wore the same clothes. In fact, he looked exactly the same, right down to the blurred edges, which I don't believe came from the heavy rain affecting my vision. I also felt the same weakness. I had to stop moving toward him. He tilted his head as if to ask, "What's wrong?" Then he laughed, and that was a terrible thing to hear, guttural and tongueless, but loud enough to make me flinch. I screamed and finally gained some attention from the other attendees. My old boss wrapped an arm around my shoulder, but I shrugged him off. "He was here," I said, loudly. "The daughter of Eris." He just looked nervous. They never leave the ones that cry. I noticed everyone purposely not looking at us or the man. When I turned to accost him again, he was gone. Of course. At a loss as to how I could honor Bella or avenge her even, I wrote this account so that people might reconsider putting their kids into showbiz. Don't. Just don't. Please. That's the best I can do, Bella. I'm too afraid to go after the Daughters of Eris myself and really want to leave the ordeal behind. I am afraid the man will soon pay me a visit. Inside, outside a nightmare, I don't know which is worse. Goodbye, Bella. Rest in peace.